Welcome to the Data Leadership Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony J. Algman. Data is everywhere in our businesses, and it takes leadership to make the most of it. We bring you the people, stories, and lessons to help you become a data leader. We've partnered with Dataversity to provide listeners with 20% off your first training center purchase with promo code ALGMANDL. Go to dataleadershiptraining.com to learn more. Today on episode 85, we welcome Dave Fink. Dave thinks the best kept secret in marketing is hiding where you least expect it, your mailbox. Over a 20-year career, he's generated hundreds of millions of dollars in ad revenue, powered viral sensations, and now as founder and CEO of Posty, he's out to reinvent direct mail marketing for a digital world. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, like we do with all our first-time guests, just please take a few minutes and give us the story of your career and how your earlier experiences led you to doing what you do now.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly crazy to think about how fast time goes. I spent, I think, so much of the early days of my career, like wanting desperately to be one of these, young, youthful, CEO entrepreneurs. And here I am, at 46 years old, looking back at, 25 years or so of history here, in the consumer internet space. And so, my career really kind of happened accidentally. Graduated college, thought I was going to get a PhD in clinical psychology, and was not enjoying kind of that research-based academic lifestyle. And I had a friend who worked for an internet company in Chicago, where I was studying at Northwestern, and I applied for a very entry-level job at a marketing technology company, very much Web 1.0 business, and was there for about 8 years in kind of a quantitative advertising sales role, and had an opportunity to learn from some of the most interesting Web 1.0 businesses that went from crazy ideas to in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, tackling some pretty big spaces, and kind of from that point on, I got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. I had an opportunity to get involved in touching, launching, investing in probably close to 75 different businesses over the next 20 years or so. And those businesses always kind of ranged between consumer brands that relied very heavily in kind of a knowledge of direct-to-consumer, data-driven growth, really brought, or certainly accelerated by, technology and the internet. And the other half of the businesses that I had experienced, building, working at, et cetera, were marketing technology companies that provided kind of emerging capabilities, always focusing on internet channels, to both traditional brands and kind of challenger consumer internet brands. And the common theme with kind of all those businesses they were always data-driven, quantitative businesses that relied very heavily on what you could do with insights and knowledge on customers and media channels to have a distinct competitive advantage in oftentimes very competitive spaces.
So where we're going with this? So obviously, like with Posty, right? We're going to end up talking about like using the mail, like the physical mail, and we're going to like direct mail stuff. And I am just so fascinated that like you've done all of these high tech internet-based things. You've learned the quantitative analysis. Obviously, the data's telling you something here, and that is something that I really hold on one sec.
Is that a robot or a traditional phone?
Okay, so my phone, I don't even know how my phone works, and literally no one's ever called me on it. And so that's supposed to be going away. And so now I'm just completely befuddled. But I didn't know how to like ignore the ringer. So we'll come back to that.
No, that's
I'll just
amazing.
pick up and find a way to edit it back in.
I hope you don't edit that out, because for all of us who have, who are probably certainly in our 40s, that specific ring is so iconic. I mean, that was the corporate phone ring that we all had for so many years.
I'll keep that in mind then. Maybe I will just leave that in out of some like nostalgic interest, but then also out of kind of like just laziness of not wanting to go back and edit it all and try to find a way to seamlessly move it back in. But what we were getting at, regardless of how we end up dealing with this, what I was getting at is that it's this strange juxtaposition where you've done all of this high tech work and you find yourself using what is one of the most traditional nostalgic mediums there is in direct mail. So can you let's start, just take us through that journey. How did you go from internet based marketing, digital marketing, obviously, which you know very well, to realizing, hey, there's a somewhat untapped opportunity here with direct mail, and how'd you make that connection and then create a business around it?
It happened super organically, quite frankly. So the years leading up to the idea and the launch of Posty, I was a partner at a tech studio in Santa Monica, and we, similar to the rest of kind of the businesses I've been involved with in my career, we invested, incubated, bought, and sold consumer internet businesses, ranging from consumer brands and marketing technology platforms. Like I think most, both entrepreneurs and marketers in general, we got bit by the social and search advertising bug, and and certainly had a lot of fun and a lot of success for a number of years, riding the coattails of really Facebook for demand gen, and lived through that whole really bell curve where in the beginning Facebook clearly was this this platform with monster user engagement and no sophistication or desire to build marketing technology tools. And for those of us who were playing in the space 12 years ago or so, can remember the frustration of how hard it was to actually find any ROI on the channel, but you still had to play there because that's where consumers were spending more and more of their time online and on mobile. And then they eventually, kind of rolled out what evolved into the most sophisticated marketing technology stack that we had ever seen. Their lookalike tools, their audience insight tools, et cetera, and they gave us a lot of information, ability to get to know how to work with our own first-party data and build prediction into our media spends, and do that all in social media, which allowed for storytelling. And so there was a few year period there where it was like everything we touched was sunshine and rainbows, and then the entire world wisened up and started dumping vast majority of their demand dollars into Facebook, so much so that now between Facebook and Google, they own 85% of the online ad world budgets, which is crazy. And they're marketplaces, and so ad rates started going up and up and up. They both love to play with their algorithms and kind of wreak havoc in every marketing department, where you have good months and bad months, good quarters and bad quarters. And we were literally, waking up, and all of the CMOs in our portfolio companies were waking up with knots in their stomach, like wondering, is Facebook going to work today or not work today? And that is literally going to be the determining factor on whether we can raise our next round of funding or whether we're profitable this month or this quarter. And that's a really dangerous place to be. So for us, all we were trying to do was take the capabilities and investment that we had made in this really kind of data-driven, predictive test and optimization approach to demand gen, to growth, that Facebook and Google and Trade Desk and DV360, like all these programmatic platforms, allowed for, and find other channels. And first we started in other digital channels. But if you go back even just 6 years ago when we launched Posty, Snap existed, but it didn't have an ads platform, and TikTok didn't exist, and there was like Tumblr and Twitter, but neither of them are really big ad-based businesses. And so there just wasn't anything where we could allocate a big portion or reallocate a big portion of our Facebook ad spend that was no longer profitable and just point the fire hose somewhere else. So for us, we started spending more time offline. And because everything is data-driven, quantitative, predictive, test and optimization, measured, we had to find channels offline where we could run those same type of controlled playbooks. And direct mail really was the original quantitative media channel, right? It's an addressable channel where you're speaking directly to individuals at households. It's actually bigger than Facebook and Google because anyone with an address is reachable. So when you look at the numbers, really it's about 25% bigger from an addressability perspective than the two biggest online channels. There's a wealth of data, both first party and third party, that you can use to gain insights, build targeting, build lookalike models, do programmatic campaign executions. And then most brands now have a way to triangulate identity data with back to their customers or conversions. And so when you put all that together, you have reach and scale, you have targeting and optimization, and you have insights and measurement that doesn't look any different than a digital channel. So for us, we got excited about it and we wanted to go execute these campaigns. And we learned really quickly that nothing had changed executionally in the direct mail space in like 30 years. And so it was like 3-month lead times to stand up, campaigns. It was, audiences that were being built using like outdated, math and certainly not leveraging, machine learning and algorithms and predictive modeling the same way. Measurement was done off Excel sheets, at the end of a campaign. So like you have a hypothesis today, 3 months later, you get your campaign out the door. 2 months later, you're getting results. You can't even remember what your hypothesis was 5 months after you set out to start the campaign. So the idea for us was just simply maybe it's possible to build kind of the marketing automation layer that behaves like Facebook Ad Manager or DoubleClick did back in the day originally for display, or the Trade Desk does for programmatic. And if we did that, could we open up the possibility and performance of the channel to a different level? So not to go too long here, but to be clear, yes, we're talking about a very tangible traditional media channel, but everything that we do is data science, technology, automation, software. So the actual day-to-day of what we're building outside of the operation and logistics side of the business doesn't look any different than any other technology business that I've been involved in over the past 25 years.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think about the steps that lead up to sending the mail, right? All of that would look just like all of the steps that lead up to creating the internet-based ad. And then you think about, okay, well, then the mail goes off into the world, and then some people interact with it, and we can get feedback loop on how they've interacted with it. There's ways to get the codes and things like that. But then once we have that feedback loop comes back to us, then all of the post engagement data returns to you the same way that the internet channels would. And that makes sense because I think a lot of the time, and I'm certainly no marketing expert, but I've dabbled with internet advertising. And while there's a lot of data that comes back, there's only so much real information and knowledge, like usable, actionable things based on individual clicks and things like that. You're still looking at aggregations of a bunch of stuff. And so the channel itself is just one more channel, and that makes sense to me. And so how did you I guess the economics behind this have to be different in terms of what it costs to go and execute a direct mail campaign versus what it costs, at least on a per click or per eyeball level on the internet. But how do those economics shake out, like pound for pound? And are there some businesses that this works better for and some that don't? I would imagine that would be the case, right?
Sure. So there are two sides to that question. The first piece is, for quantitative marketers that are looking at, measured results and that understand and get it. What they should be thinking about is we have this budget to spend to grow our business, based on the expected results, the number of new customers we acquired, the quality of those customers, the total revenue that comes in from those initial transactions, the expected lifetime value of those customers. What is where is the best place to put this budget? And if you look at that, then then you're evaluating, hey, if I had $1 million to spend and I put it into Facebook or I put it into Google or programmatic or digital retargeting or TV or addressable TV or out of home or direct mail, what you should be looking at is, which channel is going to provide the best return or which mix of channels is going to provide the best return. I can tell you definitively, after being, in this business for 6 years, measuring every single campaign that goes off the Posty platform, which is in the thousands, sending hundreds of millions of ad campaigns or reach within those ad campaigns. Direct mail definitively is as efficient as any other channel. So when you look at dollars spent, return on investment, oftentimes it's more performant, it's more efficient than Facebook or the non-branded search. It's hard to beat branded search, of course. So if that's what you're thinking about, what am I spending my money on? What am I getting? Like, no, there's no difference to actually a better value in direct mail than most other channels. However, the alternative piece is when you look at the cost to reach each individual, it's more expensive in direct mail. The cost of a stamp, paper, gas, and logistics to get that piece of mail delivered, etc. Definitively, if you're looking at a fickle, email send or a 300 by 250 banner ad or a Facebook or Instagram newsfeed ad, those on a per impression basis are much lower. Or I wouldn't even say impression, I would call it a per reach basis, because with direct mail piece, oftentimes you're getting thousands of impressions because it's sitting on your refrigerator or coffee table, but to reach that individual. Because of that, what we found is that software, technology, insights, knowledge, ability to test and optimize is more important in direct mail, arguably, than some of these other channels, because the difference between optimized campaigns and inoptimized campaigns, or unoptimized campaigns, I believe is the right term, is a dramatic difference in the eventual return on ad spend you're getting from that budget. So, because of that, we're very confident that the investment that we're making in building these tools, these technologies, surfacing insights and providing the tools in the hands of marketers has a potential bigger value add to the marketing ecosystem than building incremental tools in some of these more inexpensive media channels where there's a little bit less risk on a campaign by campaign basis. So again, to just clarify, yes, it's more expensive to reach an individual through direct mail than it is through some other digital channels. But when you look at the expected conversion rates, the quality of the conversions, the total revenue generated from those conversions, it's oftentimes much cheaper.
And I imagine, so to that point, you're probably not typically blast mailing like the Valpak coupon books to every household in most neighborhoods, right? Like you are doing some sophisticated analysis to target on an individual by individual basis, or based on certain demographics or what have you, whatever that filtering criteria is. You're using that to make sure that you are targeting through direct mail the most likely to be the highest return on investment customers and targets for those particular campaigns.
100%. When we look at the evolution of kind of quantitative digital advertising, there was a time when ads were bought contextually, right? It was, I'm going to buy ads on ESPN because I believe, my prospect customers are interested in sports, or I'm going to buy, I'm a beauty brand, and so I'm going to buy, ads on some of the Condé Nast, beauty magazine websites because that just seems to align well. It's how TV ads were bought, right? Generally these demographics watch Friends in prime time, and so I'm going to advertise, and buy TV spots during Friends. The transformation was really in kind of programmatic and unlocking the power of being able to buy audiences. So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to buy an ad on this website that's going to reach anyone that goes to this website, technology allowed you to say, as an advertiser, say, hey, I'm going to build this segment of prospects using whatever math or data science or insights we have, and I want to serve my ads on any of these websites, providing that it's reaching these specific or individuals in these specific segments. And all of a sudden, performance gains went through the roof. Facebook did the exact same thing when it was all like, it was really contextual. It was like people that generally look like, or that generally like these type of pages, like that was like the best targeting you could buy on Facebook. And then all of a sudden they rolled out their back end, kind of black box data science, machine learning engine that allowed you to upload your own first party data sets and then train lookalike models that would target specific individuals on Facebook that looked like your best customers, rather than just targeting everyone that happens to engage with a fan page that you think is contextually relevant. We do the exact same thing in direct mail. So instead of saying, hey, and direct mail used to be bought contextually, right? It used to be like, hey, I'm going to go license the Better Homes and Garden magazine subscription list, and I'm going to send, a direct mail piece to everyone, or my catalog to everyone in that audience. What Posty is doing is saying, hey, you have all this knowledge about your customer base and the different segments within your customers. In some cases, you might not have as much knowledge about them as you would like, but you have access to that data. So, connect your CRM to your Posty account, use all this amazing, data science and machine learning and data available on the Posty platform, just like it is on, available on programmatic platforms or social platforms, to gain insights into the unique qualities of different segments of your customers, and then build audiences on the Posty platform that look most similar to the best segments or the best individuals within your CRM, and isolate budget just targeting those individuals. And what you find is tremendously high conversion rates, a much higher average order value, a much higher expected lifetime value, the total revenue that those customers contribute over time, the engagement with your brand over time. And those are all things that we learned throughout the last decade and a half as technology opened up the possibility of targeting and knowledge and insights and optimization on digital. And what we found through experimentation and building the platform that we work on day in, day out, is that all of those same capabilities, all of the same performance gains can be had in direct mail. It's a really special channel. Difference is you're engaging them with a really high touch, tangible ad that has a very long shelf life, living on a coffee table or a kitchen table or a end table or a refrigerator. And that's just been really fascinating to see.
I'm curious how the content and copy of the advertising and these marketing messages, obviously they've got to be different than your banner ads or other things that are existing purely in virtual channels, electronic internet-based channels. How does an organization figure out how to do this old school direct, like actually sending pieces of paper? I don't even know. Like, do you have that kind of service, or do people use their own ad agencies, or how do you make that leap? Because I have to imagine that's substantially different than what you're accustomed to in terms of the content of your advertising on internet versus direct mail.
Okay, I'm going to blow your mind. So we have found the opposite to be true.
Huh.
And that actually that's, I think, a nice thing for all of your listeners that are potentially sitting here maybe nervous. I've never done direct mail. How do I design an ad for direct mail? One of the exercises that we do with advertisers that are new to direct mail is, in one of the initial conversations when we're talking about creative and some of the maybe design elements they want to bring into a piece of mail, is we'll just do a screen share and go onto their Instagram page. And the first thing we'll do is we'll look for the Instagram images that got the most engagement. And then we'll have them bring their top performing Facebook ads or Instagram newsfeed ads. And then we'll have them share examples of, the best performing email ads or banner ads that they've run, and what their best, homepage or landing pages look like. And more times than not, there are common themes in all of them. They're using, they found that lifestyle imagery works best, or product photography works best, or a specific hero product. They'll find that a specific, headline or tone works best, more times than not. And and it's not about designing something that looks like an old, 1982, direct mail ad. It's something that's consistent with your brand message. And you have a certain, size of an ad format that you want to use, and you should 100% be designing that to have the same look and feel as your digital media that you've already tested and optimized and have insights on. It really is that simple. And we've even had advertisers that tested just taking an like a direct, image from their Instagram ad, resizing it to fit on a postcard, using the exact same text that they had in that ad, as an overlay onto the direct mail piece ad. And it's been and more times than not, those are top performing ads versus something that looks like a traditional direct mail ad. Remember, these are just humans. It's the same human that you're engaging with, while they're falling asleep, like thumbing through TikToks or, Instagram Reels. It's just now you have something, tangible and physical that they get to, look at, almost like an ad, or sorry, a piece of artwork, which is no different than what you're going for in your, eye-catching, newsfeed ads.
And there's certainly a parallel in my mind right now. There's a parallel between being like a podcast host and doing advertising marketing for your business. Like, as a podcast host, I come up with hypotheses on the fly. I ask questions sometimes, and I've got to be completely willing to be 100% wrong, like I was in the last hypothesis that you just explained. But it gets us to more knowledge. And so there are opportunities to do a direct mail campaign. You mentioned that there's an ability to do A/B testing. There's an ability to do samples of things to figure out, hey, what does work best? We think we know what's going to work best, but because you're interacting with this tangible mechanism, you can get much more clarity on what actually is working or not, because when they open that piece of mail, you know what that is. You know what has gotten to them. I think a lot of times when we are dealing with internet-based advertising, there's so much chaos on most people's screens, you may not actually get as true of a view into what's happening for that person looking at that message, because it's encumbered by so many other things all at the same time. I think you have maybe a more pure, oddly enough, a more pure feedback loop. How's that hypothesis? Is that true?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there are certainly, when you think about the full marketing stack, there are times that you're trying to, tell a story, and it's not about just driving, a click through or a lead or a transaction. It's about, brand awareness. It's about tone. It's about engagement. There are other times where you're really trying to dig in deep and close the loop on that transaction or revenue generating, engagement with a prospect or a customer. And I think within each channel, different campaigns, have different goals. There are times that it's more branding. There are times where it's engagement driven. It's time where it's purely revenue driven. And I think the blend of those things are what make advertising work harmoniously together. I do love something you said early on in that comment, which is, I think, about like being right or being wrong. They used to talk about how like being a weatherman is like a great job because you only have to be right like 25% of the time. I mean, that's the same thing with being a marketer these days, right? Like, you got to check your ego at the door. Yes, you have to be creative and thoughtful and understand your business, and you have to have conviction and then put that, that information to work. But you also get to go into, data-driven marketing initiatives with hypotheses that it's not about what am I right or am I wrong. It's about how do you create, very dramatically different experiences, different offers, different looks and feels, different imagery, different cadences and audiences and targets, etc., to try and uncover what is likely to work and where you're seeing results. And then if you start with a good hypothesis and you have good measurement in place, then at the end of each cycle of testing, you're walking away learning a ton that you can then put to work for more efficiency later on. It's about being a scientist more than today, as much as it is about being kind of a creative or or bringing knowledge to the game. Obviously, the best scientists, learn as they go and, evolve over time, and the best marketers do as well. But I would argue probably the worst scientists are those that come in, with all the answers initially versus with the hypotheses. And same thing with marketers. If you come with all the answers, like chances are you're wrong a bunch of the time. And if you come in with all the hypotheses, then you're right 100% of the time, because there's always going to be one, test panel that outperforms the other. And guess what? You came up with both of them, or all four of them, or all 10 of them. And so whichever one works, you're right. You just got to keep testing.
Right. Well, and that's the whole point, right? Is you have to keep learning, you have to keep testing, you have to keep kind of peeling back that understanding to get at what is the most effective strategy. And that's kind of true anytime we use data for anything, is that we recognize that we are always trying to use what has happened in the past, or what we've been able to infer from what's happened in the past, to predict the future. And there's always going to be some amount of variance to what actually happens. I want to talk a little bit more about Posty in particular, because I think about, like, obviously we've focused a lot on the direct mail marketing piece of this, but I'm curious, like, how does all of this fit together? At Posty, do you also manage digital marketing efforts and the ad copy and all of that? You talked a little bit about some of that investigation, but I'm curious, like, where does Posty provide these services, and where do you then plug into other things that organizations may have going on already?
Sure. Great question. So to date, we've definitively put all of our effort and focus into building really technology that we think is transforming the way that advertisers engage with direct mail, or that brands engage with direct mail. So everything that we do and we think about, is certainly lives within the construct of understanding full funnel marketing and omnichannel marketing. Nothing lives in a vacuum, but the technology, the tools, the execution, how we, the total offering lives within direct mail specifically. Doesn't mean at some point we couldn't look at other stackable channels, but for right now, we want to deliver the market the absolute best, most sophisticated solution to win in the direct mail space. With that being said, part of what makes winning in any space possible is the connection between what you're doing in other channels and unlocking the power of your first-party data. So Posty integrates with all of your CRMs. It integrates with anywhere that you're storing data, whether it's a Cube database or it's your own homegrown database or backend, or an e-commerce platform, or marketplace, third-party platforms. So all of your first-party data can flow into your Posty account, and then we make it really simple to unlock insights and understand kind of the unique qualities of various individuals, clusters, segments, et cetera, within those data pipes that you carry. And so any of the attributes and features that you have, things like what other ad channels that individual engaged with before being a customer, how much they spend, what products they're purchasing, any of those data points and attributes that you're collecting on your first party data can be surfaced in your Posty account, can help you think about, additional ways to engage with that individual or segment. All of the media itself, what you do with that information, all ultimately results in a piece of mail being sent to an individual or group of individuals based on rule sets and targeting and segmentation and with that being said, the direct mail channel is a full funnel channel. That's one of those things that I think some marketers are surprised about, because they've thought about direct mail as just for prospecting, and they thought about direct mail just for CRM. And what we've learned, and I think proven to Posty clients time and time again, is that direct mail is an incredibly powerful tool to prospect and acquire brand new customers. It's a tool that it's a media channel that plays really nicely and can drive incrementality and lift across all your other channels as well. So it can make Facebook performance better. It can make your email performance better. It can make your programmatic display better. It can make your TV perform better. It's also an unbelievable channel for engaging CRM initiatives, whether it's re-engaging lapsed customers, whether it's driving incremental transactions, it's increasing your average order value. And then you have all this first-party behavioral data, website visitors, mobile app engagement, etc. And you're finding programmatic ways to do things like digital retargeting. You can do those same type of campaigns in direct mail as well. So you can use how someone engages with your website as signal to act as kind of a decision engine and say, hey, if we just touch this person one more time with the piece of direct mail, they're 2 times more likely to actually convert after researching a product on our website, etc. So while we are at Posty directly focused on direct mail as a media channel, the technology allows you to bring all of the information, insights that and interaction that you're gaining from your other channels, specifically digital channels in particular, to get direct mail to play nicely within your media mix.
You said something there that I want to ask a clarifying question on. Are you actually able to track, like if a person gets a piece of direct mail, are you able to then link that person to an online engagement and interaction as well? Is that something that you're able to do?
Yeah. There are ways through identity and depending on the way that the advertiser themselves collect data to triangulate recipients of a piece of direct mail back to an action, whether it's a conversion or a website visitor or a lead form completion, etc., and actually put a conversion rate and a return on ad spend number with high conviction on any of those campaigns.
Yeah, certainly once you get to a conversion, I could see that definitely you're going to have name information, you're likely going to have address information, and then like there's ways to join that for sure. But it is interesting to think that you could do that prior to conversion as well. I imagine not all the time, but it's definitely a nice way to think about, like linking that data together gives you a tremendous amount of insight into the effectiveness of your campaigns, and that's I think
really look, at the end of the day, an advertiser, well, look, a business is run based on revenues, right? And so ultimately a typical brand is going to want to measure their advertising spend tied back to a revenue generating action. And as you talked about, that's a pretty easy, straightforward way to make happen in direct mail. We have our own proprietary software. We make it happen in real time, and so you can make decisions quicker and get excited about performance trends. But then, oftentimes there's the game is like, how do you get bigger data sets quicker to be able to make directional optimizations, even if your ultimate goal is to optimize against, a revenue generating event. And so, the more data that you can capture, higher in the funnel, you're getting more data quicker, and you can help shape the trajectory of how efficient you can make the channel quicker and reduce some of the wasted budget and spend. And that's always a big game, right? It's like everybody wants to learn fast. The typical way that you learn fast is by putting more budget to work. If you're going to put more budget to work, how can you eliminate some of the risk of that budget, and looking at optimizations, deeper in funnel, how they engage with the website. Do they, become a email, newsletter subscriber? Are they filling out a lead form? Are they spending a bunch of time on your website, or are they just, bouncing after, visiting, a homepage and realizing it's not for them? All of those data points can be used to help, strengthen future optimizations in your media, and that can be done through direct mail as well.
Got it. So while we still have a couple minutes, I just want to ask, what is the kind of minimum, or even with the whole range of the investment in terms of cost or in terms of time commitment to exploring direct mail that organizations should have in mind? Is there like a minimum viable threshold or a maximum viable threshold for who this works?
Well, I can tell you that when we engage with brands, we try very hard to to get them to think in what we found is more appropriate terms. It doesn't happen often, and it's usually when we're talking to a brand who hasn't engaged in direct mail before. They're usually a little bit smaller of a business at this point, and they may ask something like, what's the least amount of money that we could spend to test this channel, right? And we always try and change that conversation through education so that they eventually, change that question. Ideally they get them there themselves, and then their question becomes like, what's the right amount of budget to actually, walk away from an initial test with some real learnings? That right, because you could spend tiny little budgets, but you're not going to get, you're a data show, right? It's mathematical significance matters. You need big enough pools of results in order to actually be learning something. You need to be able to test enough, ads, creatives, messages, audiences, models, lookalikes, etc., in order to be able to kind of find your way into, what's driving performance and what's not driving performance. When we think about structuring tests, it's never like what does a campaign need to look like for us to walk away and find results. We look in terms of what we call POVs, proof of value. So it's typically anywhere from 3 to 6 month investment in the channel to be able to map out some initial tests that map to your most pressing marketing goals, get those tests in the wild, capture some results, analyze those results, tweak kind of the next set of tests, rinse and repeat a few times, so that at the end of that cycle of testing, we have a lot of confidence that we understand what's working, what's not working. Doesn't mean everything's perfectly optimized, but there's high conviction that this is a channel that is showing signs of life. We generally have a path and some knowledge on where we want to invest and lean in to continue to drive towards the performance gains we need to make this a big scalable channel. That ranges in companies, right? And it's a lot of it's tied to whether it's the consideration value of the transaction. If it's you're talking about a $60,000 car, right? Budgets need to be bigger because the conversion rates are lower. If you're talking about $50 clothing and apparel purchases, budgets can be lower. But in all cases, I highly recommend, whether someone engages with Posty or any other provider of direct mail, that if you're not prepared to commit to the channel for a series of months and really kind of lean into testing the channel versus just throwing out a campaign and hoping it works miraculously, I would say hold off until you're there. But if you're ready and you're looking at this channel and saying this is a channel that can be big and scalable, I know my competitors are working in it. I know that Facebook is with iOS 14 changes has hurt performance, and I'm worried about the cookie disappearing, all those things, then you should show up to the direct mail channel excited, recognizing there's a ton of value, a ton of opportunity, but that you really want to lean in with the channel and find a way to do that meaningfully, and that does take some budget and does take some time and effort. It's not doesn't have to be a full-time person dedicated just to direct mail. But you want to be in it for enough cycles of testing to really walk away with learnings on the back end.
So what I'm hearing is that if you're, say, I don't know, a data podcast with a marketing budget in the tens of dollars, you are probably not the right customer for Posty. But and I joke, but it's something I don't joke about the budget, but I joke about the context of doing direct mail for a podcast. But it's what I'm hearing is, though, you need to be serious about marketing. You need to have enough scale that you're serious about marketing and spending some on it, because I would imagine that direct mail, just like any other channel, is, if you don't do the work to understand what's working, you are going to waste a lot of money on the back end regardless. And so go into it with a thoughtful approach is probably the best advice, and recognize that it is going to take some investment to get a viable return.
Or the opposite, right? You test something and you throw out one creative and one audience that some random company built a model on, and you're like, oh, we tried direct mail, doesn't work for us. And now
Right.
you're giving up on a channel that could be your biggest source of growth for the next 10 years.
Right.
Terrible.
Yeah, that makes
How horrible
sense too.
is that?
Yeah, well, and it's just like anything in business, is you have to approach it a thoughtful way and recognize if you have blinders to a situation and you just dabble with it, but not enough to actually learn from it, then you could be just closing yourself off to an entirely viable path that would have been extremely fruitful if you had just given it the right approach and the right thought and the right investment to begin with. So it certainly resonates. So with that, I think we are beyond out of time, as is our tradition here at Data Leadership Lessons. Before we go, what's the best way for folks to find you?
Yeah, so certainly if you're interested in learning more about Postie or our approach to direct mail or just direct mail in general, postie.com, postie.com. We work hard to publish great content, and that's a great place to start. And certainly if you want to go further and get in contact with our team, you can submit your information, and we're quite good at following up. If you have questions directly for me, LinkedIn is kind of my platform of choice. Their messaging app is great, and then I get to see who you are when you connect as well. So I believe I'm Dave L. Fink, F-I-N-K, is my handle at LinkedIn. And certainly if you look up Dave Fink Postie, you'll have no issues finding me on that platform.
Outstanding. Dave, thank you for being on the show today. It's been great. A fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Great questions. I hope there was some value here for your audience.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us today. As always, you'll find more information about our guests and links in the show notes. Go to dataleadershiplessons.com to subscribe and check out past episodes and accelerate your journey with training at dataleadershiptraining.com. Stay safe during these unusual times and go make an impact.